Friedrich Nietzsche is known to have said, "There's more wisdom in your body than in your deepest philosophy." As science and understanding of the body mind and mind body connection advances, we can also see that the body holds, so to speak, our deepest subconscious behaviors. It is like the program that runs beneath the surface. So, to tune into the body and to listen to the wisdom that's there, it's important and necessary to get beyond the bodily habits and reactions. Otherwise, there can be confusion with listening to one's body and reacting to the fear that it feels in a certain situation. So, to dive into listening to the body, I invited my friend Robin Finney onto the show. She is an oracle, intuitive, and authenticity guide, author, international model, and speaker, certified retreat leader, certified yoga teacher, and because one of her favorite things is being an aunt, she's a wandering aunt. She creates safe and inspiring spaces for people to connect on a deeper level so they can be seen, heard, and received with love through oracle cards, writing, coaching, retreats, travel, and photo shoot experiences. You can check out more of her work, including her international photo shoot experiences, at www.wanderingaunt.com. Wondering, W-A, not W-O. And on social media under the name at Wandering Aunt. If you haven't yet, please leave a review about the show and today's guest on Apple Podcasts, and head over to solomonezra.com or follow me on Instagram at king_Solomon8 and Facebook Solomon Ezra Berezin to learn more. Also, subscribe to my YouTube channel, Solomon Berezin, to get updates on new videos and podcasts. And finally, if you're interested in starting my one-on-one coaching programs, head over to the coaching services pages on my website and be sure to reach out. One is called Mind Set Go, and it's geared for athletes looking to get an edge on the performance of their mind. And the other is Cultivating Certainty, aimed to help individuals with uncertainties and anxieties transform their health. Now onto the show with Robin Finney.
It's so funny. I was thinking about when we met, and I was like, "Oh yeah, we met at that Joe Dispenza event," and I was like, "No, we didn't. We met in a coffee shop."
Yeah, and then again at the when he was in Houston.
Yes, yeah.
I think that was very cool, and we could even start there. How it was back in Dallas, and at that time I was like really interested in reading his books and really getting into it and learning it as much and as deeply as I can. And I would take the book with me to different coffee shops, even like after I was finished reading it, just to as a conversation starter or see like if somebody would pick up on it. And it worked like nearly every time I would go to a coffee shop, somebody would notice it and it would spark conversation.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
So great.
But we happened to stay in touch, and then I just would look into and follow your different photo shoots and stuff that you've done. And then next thing we know is near like almost a year later, last October, what was it, 2020 or 2019?
It was 2019. Yeah.
Yeah. And then I think you noticed me at his one-day workshop in Houston.
Yeah.
And yeah, so it's really cool. We just have these spontaneous times we just run into each other.
Yes. Yeah. So great. I love how life does that. Yeah.
Well, to get started, Robin, I'd love to hear a little bit about your background and what led into all the different coaching you've been doing, the photo shoot, and the wonderful like traveling that you've been doing around the world. I've been able to listen to a few of your talks that you've given that are on YouTube, as well as some short podcasts. But I'd love to really hear it from you and get to know you a little bit better.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. So like many entrepreneurs have a similar story of being in the corporate world. And that was me. I was in worked for the same company for over 11 years, and I just always had this itch to travel. And I kind of had a work to try mentality. And So I would go on like epic trips every year, but it just always left me with this feeling like, oh, I'm meant to do this
Yeah.
longer. I'm meant to do this long term. And so finally, after I went on my first meditation retreat in 2017 in Guatemala, and
Mm.
I got just a clear vision that it was time to quit my job. And so it took a little bit after
Yeah.
that to really lean into that. But then in 2018, I actually, it's been right around this time, 3 years, I quit my job and I bought a one-way ticket to Australia. And then for the next 8 months, I only bought one-way tickets and would just travel. I would show up in a place and kind of have the place speak to me and meet people, and would either travel somewhere for an event or based on somebody saying like, oh, you should check out this city or this
Yeah.
country. And it was in my travels that I just really learned to connect with myself on a deeper level and kind of uncover like really who I am and what gifts I have to offer and what I want to do. And through that, I stepped into doing photo shoots. And it was something, it's so beautiful when you think about like how this, like the synchronicities of life
Yeah.
and kind of like how we met and
Hmm.
everything. But just how, like, when you really follow your heart and follow your yes, how life just shows up for you. And so that showed up for me in that way. I was going to a really cool city in Mexico and I thought, oh, this would be a really fun place to do a photo shoot. And then I like really connected with the the city and with the guy who was doing my nails. Found out I was doing a photo shoot and he said, oh, you have to come back and let me do your makeup. And I was like,
Wow.
oh, really? And so it just like again, it kind
Yeah.
of sparked that. But it was in that moment that I saw the joy of him being in his craft and in his art. And I saw the same joy and light with the photographer. And I thought, this is a really cool way to experience local culture and support local artisans. And so that birthed my photo shoot mission. And since then, I've modeled in 8 different photo shoots across, I think, 4 continents. And it stopped, obviously, it paused in 2020 with the pandemic, but I'm
Mhm.
hoping to start that up again soon.
Yeah.
Um, and then also just throughout my journey, I started getting into just a more spiritual path and journey and just really listening to my inner being and my inner soul and what wanted to come forth through that. And so I started experimenting with just learning about oracle cards and my intuition and like tuning into my body and hearing that my body has wisdom.
Yeah.
And so through that, that's kind of birthed my company now. So
That's
it's
awesome.
been quite a journey, quite a journey.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing. And I can understand like when you're first taking those initial jumps or initial leaps, you really have to be in tune with your body, that as you mentioned. And one of my favorite quotes is, "There's more wisdom in your body than in your deepest philosophy," by Nietzsche. And I'd really love to dive in a little bit more into that and hear from you. How did you first kind of honor that little voice that was, you know, urging or pushing you to go travel? Or what was it about the photography that helped to kind of reveal your soul, as you mentioned, and you even offer it as a way to help people, get in touch with really who they are? What is it about the photography as a way, because it's that it reveals somebody's inner soul?
Yes, it was actually a photo shoot that started my journey, what I call my journey to transformation.
Mhm.
And in 2015, I had just kind of gotten out of a really dark space in my life, and I was in a depression for a while,
Yeah.
and so I started coming out of that and taking like taking program. I was like um, taking different seminars, participating in programs, and learning more about transformation. And I saw that one of my friends who's a photographer was doing a celebration photo shoot. And so I thought, oh, that sounds intriguing. And from a little girl, I'd always dreamed of like like being in a
Yeah.
warehouse. Like I don't know, I had this vision of an abandoned warehouse, and so I told my friend that, and so we did that. We found an abandoned warehouse in Dallas, and but it was a cool experience, like in the moment being
Mm.
photographed. It's very vulnerable to be in front of the camera and allow yourself to express yourself and show up in that way. But really the magic that showed up for me was after, when I got my photos. It
Interesting.
was really the first time that I looked at myself and was like, oh wow, I'm actually beautiful. And
Mm.
it wasn't like from a space of like physical beauty while I saw that, but it was like I
Mm.
could see myself on a deeper level, because I
Interesting.
could still see in those photos there was still some pain present, because I was still just like starting to just heal myself. And so I think it was just like me seeing like the authenticity and the allowance of allowing myself to be experienced in that way.
Yeah.
And then every photo shoot I've done since then, it's like, it's so cool because I always allow the place and what's going on in my life to kind of show me what it is. So each photo shoot has a different vibe to it.
Yeah.
And
No,
I
I
always,
love looking at the photos too that you have. They're super high quality as well.
yeah, yeah,
It reminds me of there's a wonderful quote, as above, so is below. Or that there's, it's said in several different ways or different verbiage. The outer world is a reflection of your inner world. So it's like sometimes I feel like we don't, or we discredit the surface, because it's also true, there's more beyond the surface than just surface level.
right.
But it is also true, like you were experiencing when you were looking at the photographs, that when you're also very in tune with your soul and who you are, authentic self, it also shows externally.
Yes.
So it's really cool. And it's original. And there's so many different people that go around the world traveling and doing different photographs, but I love your story behind it.
Yeah, thank you. And it's one of the things that I do is, and I share this with my clients too, is I always set an intention
Mm,
every time to identify like what it is that I want to embody in my photos, and then I let the photographer know that too.
okay.
And so it's like more of a conversation, and then it's like allowing that part of you to be seen and expressed as well, because we don't often, that's like if you're getting headshots taken, or for like your profile or your website or something, like oftentimes we may not think about, like we're like, oh, I'm just going to get photos taken so I
Yeah.
can have them updated, but we don't think about like it from a deeper level. And it's like, no, who do I actually want to be? Who do I want to shine in my photos, and allow that person to be expressed?
Wow. It does take a lot of being in tune with your body. But first, is it your camera and you ask, like you bring somebody along to take the photographs, or you find somebody local?
I find somebody local, because that's
Mhm.
part of my mission, is to support locals.
Yeah.
And so wherever I go, I'll find a local photographer and hair and makeup artist. I don't always do the hair and makeup, but it just depends on the timing. But I always hire a local photographer.
Wow. In the conversation of being in tune with your body, and I think it really means like your intuition.
Hmm.
your,
Yeah.
you open up really on your website, on the About You page, and explaining how you grew up very in tune with your body. How did you learn to listen to it, the intuition from the body, and really kind of distinguish between listening to it and allowing that guidance, and not falling victim to when it's just feeling fear at a certain time? Because
Right.
can be a split hair there, that somebody maybe doesn't, they think they're listening to their body when really it's just fear coming up that keeps them from going out of their comfort zone.
Right. Yes, that's a great question. And It's interesting because I look back at my life, and as a child, my coping mechanism was I would go and hide.
Mm,
And
same.
so it's like if things were crazy, I would go and hide. And I used to look at that as like, oh, why am I always running away? And now I can look at it like, wow, as a child, I had that wisdom of knowing my body was telling me like it wasn't safe and I needed to protect me and take care of me. And as an adult, I've definitely had to navigate that. And like for a while, for many years, I mean, I would walk around with like pain in my neck and shoulders. And it wasn't until I would say within the last 2 years that when I started learning more about my intuitive gifts and just like really the sensations in my body, that it's when I'm feeling it in my neck and shoulders, it's actually not mine.
Interesting.
Like so I'm highly sensitive, or other people may know it as the term of empath.
Yeah.
And so I feel things in my body. And so I've learned to distinguish. And so oftentimes when it is like in my neck and shoulders, then I can look and I'll ask questions. So that's what I encourage people. It's like ask questions of your body. Our bodies are intelligent
Mhm.
and they have so much wisdom. And if you ask the questions and then just get still and quiet and allow the answers to come. And so I'll tune in and ask, is this mine or is this someone else's?
Wow.
And if it's someone else's, then I'll go through a process of just clearing it and allowing it. Like sometimes it's literally like I go outside and lay my hands on a tree and just ask, like I'm really connected to nature. And so I'll just ask like that the energy be moved through me and lovingly sent back
Wow.
into the earth. And then other times, if it's my energy and I'm recognizing that I have, because our bodies, a lot of times, like sickness is associated with something at a deeper level.
Mhm.
And so if there's something that isn't working in our life, then oftentimes our physical body may experience symptoms. And so I always, it's the same thing. It's like I'll ask questions of it and say, okay, what is it what's here? And what am I really, is there something I'm really afraid of that
Wow.
I'm not acknowledging? And so it's been a journey. It's not something that I
Yeah.
had to, it's a practice. It's a practice to get in it and to remind myself like, okay, is this mine? And
It's
if it is, then what do I want to do with that? If it's not, then how can I clear it?
wow. And some of the like weight that you would feel that wherever it would come from, I'm sure depending on how heavy it would be, it would take, quite some practice to really release it.
Yes.
What's the clearing process? I mean, because you really kind of opened the way that you said you pinpointed, like when you feel it in a certain area, you're pretty clear now that it's not yours. Like and it makes sense, like in your upper back and your neck, that it's like you're carrying something, so it's
Right.
coming from some external somebody or some other external thing. And I'm sure we've all felt that at times, myself included. And pretty often, like I can even feel a little bit of weight every now and then. When I have a great release, it kind of rises to the surface, understandably so, because that means it's on its way out, because it all has to
Right.
rise. But I'd love to, can you explain a little bit more of the kind of clearing process, and getting really even refined, more in tune with the the sensations that the body is um, verbalizing to you, or yeah, expressing.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So everything is energy. So I think of like our bodies are energy, our like trees, like
Mhm.
anything physical, like it's all there, it's all energy and you can feel it. And some people, like I used to deny it and think like, oh, I don't feel that or I don't
Mhm.
sense things. But we all have innate abilities within us to sense, and it just may look different for different people. um but in general, a clearing practice is I typically will drop into a meditation and allow myself like just really focus on my breath. And when you tune into your breath and allow that to guide you, one, as you know, because you're very seasoned in this area, is it takes you out of whatever's going on in your mind,
Yeah.
and it really slows your nervous system. And so I'll focus on my breath, and then I will just ask that I'll tune in and just ask that any energy that's stored in my body that's not mine be released. And sometimes it's just a practice of sitting and meditating and breathing into it and allowing it. And then other times it's like I physically need to go outside and like
Just
put
kidding.
my, as I said, like put my hands on a tree or pick up a rock and just like feel the energy, or barefoot in the ground. Like I often do that between Zoom calls because, as many of us know, like from after COVID, it's like we're all so in the virtual world now,
Yeah.
and even that was like starting to weigh on me in some sense. And so now I will just, like, if I have a day full of calls, in between calls I just go outside, even if it's like 1 or 2 minutes, and
Yeah.
I'll just stand outside and just ground myself in the earth. And that just, it's like, I don't know, sometimes we take for granted the power of nature
Mhm.
and just the healing aspects that it has. And so that's a big practice that I often recommend. And then if you don't have access to that, you can just bring to mind like a tree or a rock or even a fire, and just imagine yourself like releasing whatever's there and
Yeah.
burning it into the fire, or letting it go
Yeah.
on something else, so that it's just releasing from your body. And then just trust that it's being released.
It's that even trust in my experience has been like a muscle of building, because it's like sometimes you can only trust, there's like so many levels to it, so you can only trust so much at a certain time. But what I love about trust and with meditation and all that you were talking about is you always like receive exactly what you're able to at that certain at that point of practice.
Yes. Yeah.
I, as you know, I'm sure, and when there's something like a real weight that you're carrying that's a lot heavier, let's say, or it was kind of really embodied for a while, and it takes a lot of practice for it to rise and clear out. And as we've learned, like with Dispenza and other meditation practices we've done, the body wants to stay in that familiar
Yes.
place. And with that, when something's like really deep and it's rising, the body kind of sense really kind of any signals that arises as a certain thought to stay in that known. And sometimes it can be really concerning or fearful, and how it manifests. How in those moments, how have you learned to um, be in tune and recognize, oh, it's just a thought, and to keep going kind of further?
Yeah. Well, sometimes it's so interesting because it absolutely is a practice. It's
Yeah.
sometimes I can recognize it like right away, and I'm like, okay, great. But then other times I will just be in it.
Yeah.
And it takes, like, I was sick recently and I had a cold and I just had this chronic cough, and I um I just kept like kind of brushing it off.
Mm.
And then I recognized one day, it hit me. I was like, oh, every time I go on retreat and come back, I tend to get sick. Because it's like I'm
Yeah.
upgrading in a way, but then I'm releasing a lot while on retreat. But then I don't have practice. I don't always have practices in place to step into that new energy. And so I'll get sick and then I'll be in it. And when I don't feel well, then I'm just like, I'm totally in a lower vibration. And it's like, it will take extra
Yeah.
effort sometimes for me to remind myself that. And then sometimes I just will surrender into rest
Yeah.
and just know that, okay, right now the best thing I can give myself and give my body is sleep. And it's amazing that just by doing that, how much it really does make a difference in shifting those vibrations. And sometimes it takes like, I mean, it's taken a while, and I recognized, I was like, okay, this is a season right now where I'm just meant to slow down and
Yeah.
rest. And then I'll know, it's like, then I'll trust that when it's time and when the energy rises. And so I did. It's like I finally got to a point of surrender. And I think that's it. It's like we can be in the discomfort because it's comfortable. A lot of times our discomfort is comfortable to us
Yeah.
because it's what we know. And so for me, chaos is very comfortable. It's like I learned that from a young age. I learned how to survive in it. And so surviving is comfortable.
Yeah.
And so it's been a practice to step out of that really and just recognize like, oh, my new comfort can actually be living in a higher vibration
Yeah.
and allowing things. Like I have a sign on my desk that says allow, or it says always believe that something wonderful is about to happen. Because I recognize that I was not viewing
Mm.
life. I was always expecting the worst thing or worst case scenario to happen.
Yeah.
And so then what's going to happen is you're going to match that.
Yeah. Because we were kind of grew up preparing for the worst case scenario, and so it's
Right.
reversing, it's changing that perspective. But
Right.
the feeling of sickness after like retreats, it makes sense because uh you raise, like you said, you raise your vibration so much, so then when you come home after however long it was, it's like a natural process. The autonomic nervous system is like clearing out anything that doesn't align with that kind of greater expression of health.
Yes. Yes.
It's funny though, because like when I came home after like dispensas, I was feeling kind of sick like that. And because it happens to be COVID time though, everybody's like, oh my gosh, it's gotta be COVID. I'm like, no,
Right.
it can't be.
Yeah. That was me 2 weeks ago. It was like I had a chronic cough and
Yeah.
people were like, oh my goodness. And I was like, you were traveling. And I was like,
Like, no, it's just
no,
not
it's not
sleeping.
that. Um,
What's the what's this recent retreat that you were talking about, that we were messaging about, really about like shifting your energy? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes, I went on a retreat with Darla Ledoux, who's the owner of Sourced Experience, and she actually just came out with a new book called Shift the Field that talks a lot about energy, and she goes through her framework of the anatomy of a transformation. And so we on retreat we were um, so like really centered around energy and being in our sourced, she calls it sourced magic. And
Mm.
so there's different types. I think there's 6 different types of source magic that she has that you can identify through a quiz. But so I got sensation magic. And so that's really like what I described with feeling things in my
Yeah.
body and being empathic and really having to protect. It's important for me to protect my energy. And so we spent time like really honing in on our magic. And so I was able to, it's like I do oracle card sessions with my clients, and I'll always at the beginning I'll take them through a meditation and just to ground themselves, and chakra healing always comes up for me. It's like I just naturally go into that and clearing chakras. And so I recognized, I thought, oh, maybe this is something to expand upon. And so I spent some time during the retreat. We got to practice different different energies and
Wow.
ways of going about our work. And so I was like, you know what, I'm going to do this. And so I still used oracle cards as like a tool, but I was really more tuning into the person's body and wanted to see what came up for me and start practicing that muscle of trusting my body to feel things. And so it was really interesting because the person I was paired with, um, I noticed it's like as I was guiding her in the meditation, whenever we came up to like the throat chakra, my throat kind of got
Yeah.
tight.
What
And
her when you
and
were
then I
helping
asked her when I
her?
was helping, like
You
helping
could feel
her.
it. Wow.
And so then after I asked her after the meditation, I said, what showed up for you? And she said, well, my throat was, and I was like, oh, interesting. So I was
You felt it.
feeling that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so now I'm starting to just like trust that more because I've dismissed it for so long, thinking that it's weird. I mean, it's weird. And especially people who aren't familiar with this type of language or transformational path, it can come across as like, that doesn't seem real. And it can be easily dismissed. And so I recognize I've been dismissing it for a while, not recognizing that I had this gift
Yeah.
within me. So the retreat really supported me and honing in on that more.
So you were using more like the oracle cards to help with the other person, but now you're able to just really tune in, and it's almost like you can sense what the other person is experiencing.
Yes, yeah. So it's like feeling, I can feel in my body, kind of feel into what they're experiencing, and it will create an opening for me to ask questions.
Interesting.
Um,
Yeah,
and then,
how has it really helped when you have a client, if somebody's interested and curious to learn more? How do you take all the stuff that you've learned and guide somebody through that? Because it sounds like you really are in tune, not just with your own body, but with others. So how do you open and hold space there?
yeah, so I will, it's very similar to like really anything that I do. It's like I always set an intention
Mm,
beforehand that the highest, like whatever the highest good for the person and whatever needs to be revealed will show up for them. And so it's really, it's a big practice in trust and trusting that. And I was working with a client last week, and so I thought, okay, I'm going to put into practice what I learned on retreat, and I'm just going to go for it and trust that it's going, like things are going to show up. And so I again started with the meditation, and then I just had an image. It was like I had an image when I got to um, leading her through the heart chakra and cleansing that. And so then afterwards, I said, I was like, how's your, what did it feel? Did you have any messages show up around your heart space? And then she said, yeah, actually. And so we were able to dive into that more. And then I used the oracle cards as just like a complement to the session. And
nice.
then the cards kind of just really spoke to that healing. And so I'm learning now as I step into it more that it's like I have it within me.
Yeah.
And before it was like my oracle cards were like my crutch. And now I'm
What
like,
exactly are what do they have on them? Like what kind of messages or yeah.
yeah. So most people, like whenever I teach a course on oracle cards, and I've got I'm starting the next round in May. But a lot of times when I say I do oracle cards, people are like, oh, tarot cards. And they're different. It's like they're both ways of receiving information. And what I like to say is oracle cards are a mirror reflecting back to you what you already know inside.
Is it
So there's all different decks that you can get. I have multiple different decks, and they have different themes and different depths of the message. Some are very simple and to the point, and some are like very in depth. And it can be from anything from, like, I know I'm in a phase right now where I'm shifting from one space to another. And so the other day I pulled this time to go card, and it's like you have nothing more to learn about
yeah.
this area of your life. And so the messages will provide a little more depth. And most of the time when I'm pulling cards for my clients, that's what I say. It's like they already know it inside them, but
Yeah.
sometimes you need that
Yeah.
extra support to remind you
It's
that
nice, and
it's
I
there.
like what you said, how you realized when you were honoring your own power that it became more of like a tool that complemented that. Because,
Yes.
you know, as we also learned, we don't want to um, become victim or like be used by that tool, by the oracle
Exactly.
card, by the book, by the whatever it may be.
Right. And that's what I teach in my courses. No matter what, like if you're in a confusion, like I teach my students like when to pull cards and when not to pull cards. Because if you're already in a mental spiral and confusing and asking, why is this happening or whatever, that's not a time,
Yeah.
because it's just going to confuse you more. And so I say that it's like ultimately, no matter what, whether you're working with oracle cards or you're working with a medium or you're meditating and you get a message, whatever it is, it's like you still ultimately have the authority.
Yeah, that's a powerful switch. It's also kind of like I used to try this thing, occasionally still do, from this book I read. It from a Jewish background. It was called like what was it called? Jewish meditation. Um, but it had a part in there about prayer, and you would write like an intention, like to source to God, and then you would flip open like a prayer book to a random, not really random, but you know, page, and whatever, psalm or whatever it was on would have some kind of relevant message. So it sounds very similar to the oracle card, the message at least that they were expressing. But the powerful switch I experienced, and it sounds like you also experienced, is having these themes as a tool rather than like an escape, in a way. Not
Right.
really an escape, but
Mhm.
relying on them. And that
Yes.
includes like the meditation, which is, it's inside of you, but it's when realized that, then those messages or the cards. I don't really have experience with the cards, but excuse me, sounds similar to the prayers or to the holy objects, whatever it
Yes.
is.
Yeah.
Then the way in which I engaged in them also kind of fused together with the actual message or the um, performance of the action to a greater like experience.
Yes. Yeah. And I think it's a reminder too that anything can become a crutch.
Yeah.
And even yoga, when I was doing my yoga teacher training, I got so like focused on completing my certification within a certain amount of time and just taking yoga classes that I just like checked myself out of the world
Wow.
and was just focused on numbers. And so it was like I was just like showing up for class. Some days I was doing 3 classes a day and I was missing, it was like I was totally missing the
Mhm.
point of yoga. And so I think it's just like noticing, it's like we talk about boundaries a lot, and it's just even noticing healthy boundaries around the things that are beneficial for us too. It's just like noticing anything that you're giving your power away to, that's like coming in and allowing, like actually pulling away from it being something useful for you.
Wow.
So I think it's really learning that balance.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing. That's
Yeah.
it's cool and such a amazing paradigm shift
Yes.
in the tools that we use and can learn. Um, so once again, thank you so much. You have your website, and you have the different coaching, you have the oracle cards and the revealing your soul photo shoot, and God willing, soon enough when things start opening up as they have been, the solo retreats. I like it.
Yes.
What's the meaning behind the name Wandering Aunt?
Yeah, so I have 4 nieces and a nephew,
Mm.
and I wanted to, they're, I say they're my first loves next to travel. And so I started my blog 4 years ago, and I thought, oh, I want to combine my two loves. And so that's how Wandering Ant came about.
Awesome. Well, Robin, it's been such a pleasure. How can people, other than following you on your website, wanderingaunt.com, um, how can people get in touch with you, learn more about the different coaching you're doing and the traveling and the photo shoots, and if anybody's
Yes.
interested in supporting?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can visit my website, wanderingant.com, and also my social media handle is at wanderingant. And just reach out to me, send me a message if you want to learn more. And I also have an option on my site where you can schedule a 15-minute curiosity call. So if you want to explore more of what it might look like to work together.
Awesome. Well, I know when I was learning like from the certification in holistic nutrition, um, and the coaching certification, everybody wants to be heard, to be loved, and to belong, and to be seen. And I really think all the work that you're doing is really helping us get into that space and in tune with our body. So we're not just looking for those, to look for being heard or loved from something externally, but internally. And as we learn to belong and love ourselves and hear our own internal voice, as we mentioned earlier, then external world will reflect that because we're believing it ourselves. So thank you so much for taking your time to speak with me. It's been a privilege and just exciting to be able to have met you. And I'd like to say met you spontaneously a couple times now,
Yes.
and to remain and maintain contact.
Yes. Thank you so much, Solomon, for having me as a guest. And yeah, I look forward to more spontaneous
Yeah.
connections. Yeah.